what are some things that are in our control, right? Thinking about what is our current effective and marginal tax rate, right? Are we using our tax deferred accounts like a 401k, like an IRA or a Roth IRA or a health savings account, right? Making sure that we're using up our available deductions, regardless of what current or future tax rates are going to be. And then also, are we building different types of buckets of money?
You are tuned in to the Money Script Podcast. Today we will share strategies to help you grow your financial literacy and improve your money script. I'll be back with some important announcements. Until then, enjoy the show.
Welcome back to the Money Script Podcast. It's your host, Yohance Harrison. So happy to be with each and every one of you today, you lifelong learners of financial literacy. I need to just pause for a second. I know TJ is here. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, you can see TJ, and I know it's just awkward because you're just sitting there quiet, but this is the intro, and I don't have an engineer to like switch back and forth, so maybe you see him. Or maybe my engineer figured out how to do that. I don't know. It's in post. The point is, I want to say thank you. Thank you. The outpour of support that we've had for the podcast recently has been incredible. I am booked out with the guests until I think February. So I'm so excited to have these conversations with all of you. Once we talked about moving the podcast next year to talk more towards the medical community, I want to thank the medical community for saying, I want to be on the show. So we look forward to learning from you and just learning from you. So we're excited. So thank you. Thank you everyone for all of your support. Thank you for liking. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for, what else do you do? Thumbs upping. Thank you for sharing it with one person. That's been like the best, because I've had a few texts from people saying, hey, my friend sent me your podcast. I'm like, oh, you were the one person. So when you're done today, or not, you don't have to wait till you're done. You can pause right now and just hit the share whatever button, screenshot, send it to a friend. Say, hey, we're about to talk about some money. We might learn something. Let's listen together. So with that, TJ van Gerven. Did I do that right?
You did.
Nice. TJ and I shared another podcast together, his podcast. I was so excited to do it. His podcast is the Do More With Your Money podcast. Catchy name. I love it. And he is a CFP. He is hailing from VA. Is that where you are right now?
No, I'm actually in Massachusetts, outside Boston.
You're in Massachusetts. Okay. So up outside of Boston. Whew. Mom says we're moving to Boston. Name that movie. TJ, good to see you again. How have you been?
I'm doing really well. It's good to see you again. We had a great conversation on my podcast, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and hopefully add value to your audience.
There's no hope here. You're going to add value. It's going to happen. So this is we've been doing this all season long. It's Between Two Advisors. It's where I sit down with another advisor and we just kind of talk shop. I mean, it's like if we were working in the same office or the same floor and happened to come across each other at the water cooler, you know, those big things with the 5-gallon jugs. For those of you that work from home, you might have a water cooler. I guess they're less popular these days. You can just get, the fridge with the purifier on it. But you'd meet by the water cooler or by the coffee station and you just strike up a conversation. You know you're supposed to be working. You know you got stuff on your desk that you're supposed to do, but instead you're just hanging out with your coworker, just talking shop. So this one is going to be this one's going to be a little different, I should say, because we don't like to get into politics a lot on the show. I mean, we talk about some political things, especially in the realm of money. And of course, that's where we're going. But we just had, so for us today, we're recording on Friday, and it is Friday, November the 8th. So the election just happened. So for those of you that this is your first time paying any attention to what's happening in the world, Donald Trump has become the 47th president. He is the first president in 100-something years. I think it was Grover Cleveland, somebody fact check me on that. So he's the first president in 100-something years that was a president, lost the re-election, and then came back came back around again 4 years later. He's also the first president that has a laundry list of, let's just say, skeletons that are in his closet. But you know what? American people said, we like that better than the other. So we've been getting a lot of questions. TJ, I'm sure you have. I'm speaking for myself. I've been getting. TJ, I'm sure you've been getting questions from your clients, questions from prospects, just saying, what does this all mean? What is it going to mean for the stock market? What is it going to mean for my investments? What is it going to mean for Social Security, for Medicare, et cetera? And I guess I'll just go ahead and start out by saying, TJ, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know.
I think that's a fair assumption, yeah.
Yeah. Look, people, we help you plan the future, not predict it. That's our role. We're here to help you plan your future, not predict it. And good financial plans are prepared for the inevitabilities that may be headed our way. Now, just to dive into this, if this isn't your first time listening to the Money Script podcast, a few weeks ago I had another guest on, and this was before the election, and we talked about how the stock market performs underneath elections. And I have this, and TJ was so kind to allow me to share it. So I'll let him give just kind of his first thoughts on it. So this is the S&P 500 performance throughout U.S. presidencies going back to 1943. So TJ, you're a smart man. Can you share with the people, for those that are listening and not viewing, you can't see this, and we'll put a link to this. This is from YCharts. We'll put a link to it in the show notes. But TJ, can you share with the people a little bit about what you see in this chart here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing a pretty clear uptrend here over the long term. Obviously, there are some small, declines along the way, but I think the real takeaway here is that, as long as you believe in, the innovation and competition of free markets, and you're a long-term investor, that, I think we probably put a little too much stock, pun intended, into how much, an administration can influence markets. Obviously, policy is going to have some downstream effect over time, but again, it's really important that we avoid making these, decisions, especially like if we're making huge all-in decisions to get in and out of stocks or move into different asset classes, that's probably going to hurt us in the long term. And so having this long-term perspective is important for kind of reiterating that message that we tell the clients all the time.
One of the things I noticed on this chart, TJ, is that there's not a presidential term. This is Democratic president versus Republican president. For those of you that can't see it, they have blue representing Democratic presidents and red representing Republican presidents. And it's the S&P 500 since 1943. And as TJ says, it's all going up and to the right. What stands out to me, TJ, is that not one of these blobs of time for Republicans or Democrats have a negative number associated with it.
Yeah, it is interesting to note that. I think that it just goes to show the power of time and staying disciplined to your strategy. I think that, part of the reason that we're compensated for investing in the stock market is that there is short-term risk, which is really not impacted, in my opinion, by administrations as much as we may think it is. It's really about, external factors, things that can happen. And so the longer that we stay invested, the more likely we are to see the value of our investment increase. And that's the nature of long-term investing.
That, you said it, that is the nature of long-term investing. And I like that you mentioned that we don't find the administration will have a overall sweeping effect on the entire stock market. However, policies will affect some sectors or even individual companies in dramatic fashion. It can. But again, we can't predict what that's going to be. And sometimes bad news isn't always bad for the stock market. And sometimes good news isn't always good for the stock market. Sometimes it's just news.
Yeah, I think a lot of it too is you have to think, a lot of times things are, when you read information in the news, that has already been reflected in the price movement, right? The stock market's pretty good at taking new information and basically pricing that out over time. So you want to be careful, like when you're reading things in the news, to not react to that necessarily, because that's probably already been priced into what's happening.
So I had a client last week, TJ, this week, we're still in the week, that on Wednesday reached out to me in the evening. For those of you that weren't paying attention to the stock market on Wednesday, it was one of the best days of 2024. I think one of the best days since 2021, I think, for the major indices. That'd be the S&P, the Dow, and the NASDAQ. And in the message, she said, hey, I see the stock market just hit an all-time high. Let's hold off on investing any money. And I just thought to myself, really? So I decided to use a little ChatGPT because it's been helpful in cases. And I said, ChatGPT, I need to know the S&P 500 over the last, I looked to see how old she was, and I put in her age over the last 42 years. What year had did the S&P 500 have the most all-time highs? And it told me, I think it was 2017, fact check me on that, I believe it was 2017, it had 62 all-time highs. Do you know how much the S&P has returned since 2017? Okay. So it's like if you said, I'm going to wait until it goes down, I mean, your best chance would have been maybe 2022. But the problem with waiting for it to go down is that where is the bottom? I mean, we got to be right twice.
Absolutely. One of my favorite educational resources is JP Morgan Guide to the Markets. Anybody can just Google Guide to the Markets. And it's a slideshow that they do, on a quarterly basis. And there's a principles tab for investing principles. And one of the charts actually shows historically, if you had invested at a new all-time high, your return in different periods, looking at 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year. And actually what we find is that investing at an all-time high, you're actually more likely to have a better return moving forward than if not. And so it seems counterintuitive because we all think like, oh, things are going to revert. And there is reversion, right, within markets.
Of course.
But historically speaking, with the evidence that we have, and again, it's a decent sample size, like 100 years, investing in a new all-time high tends to lead to more all-time highs. And so this is why it's just important to have some perspective around historical evidence there. Not that that's going to always happen in the future, but it is the best guide we have.
See, because we have technology, we are going to pull up exactly what you just talked about.
There you go. I love it.
I do too. Thank you. You showed me something new. I forgot about JP Morgan's wealth of knowledge here.
Yeah, they have some good charts in there. And I think also, one of the things to consider too is if you are concerned about, maybe you are in retirement and you're living off your investment assets and you don't have, fixed income sources and you're concerned about, how your portfolio moves. I mean, first of all, that's why you want to really be confident in your overall investment strategy, but also understand that you probably don't have 100% US stocks, right? There is some benefit there to thinking about owning companies outside of the US. We showed a chart for the S&P 500, but having geographical diversification as well can have some benefits there.
Agreed. So this is what you were speaking of. Okay, so it says investing at all-time highs and market floors. So the number of all-time highs in 2024 was 47. I didn't have to look as far as I did before, TJ. Thanks.
Gotcha.
I went all the way back to 17. Percent of days the S&P closes at all-time high, 6.6%. Percent of all-time highs that act as a market floor. 30% of all-time highs wind up turning to a market floor, meaning the market doesn't go below that all-time high anytime in the near future. Wow. So if you were to invest on any day over the last 5 years, your return would have been 73.8%. No, excuse me, that's not 5 years. Over the last, it was a lot more. Oh yeah, it's the 5 year. Wait, what is it saying there?
So on the right, chart, what it's showing is that basically looking back at historical data back to 1988 for the S&P 500, if you invested at a new high, that's the green bar, then your return 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year, that's the return. Okay. So the return is higher than in investing on any day.
It
right?
is.
So that kind of dispels kind of that idea of like, hey, I'm concerned it's a new all-time high. What if there's a reversion? Well, at least historically, this chart looking back to 1988, you would have done better investing.
Wow. That's pretty cool. See, I told you, this is water cooler talk. This is just two advisors learning from each other. This is a great resource. Thank you, TJ.
Absolutely.
You know who you are. I'm looking at you. You know who you are. You sent me that email. I'm sending you that JP Morgan report. Okay.
It's a good principle, and I like within that guide to the markets the principles pages in general, because it's a good thing to show if you're new to maybe thinking through investing, creating a household investment strategy. These are principles to understand, because it can be easy to get caught up in maybe some myths of investing. And also one thing to consider too is that's looking at the S&P 500, right? So a good proxy for the US stock market. Versus individual stocks are going to behave differently, right? With an individual stock, you can always have permanent loss of capital, meaning that you lose your entire investment.
Everything's gone.
But
and it's gone.
Yeah, if the S&P 500 goes to zero, well, that has some like actual implications for life, like practically speaking. So it's probably more unlikely that would happen. It could happen, but if it did happen, we'd have bigger problems, right?
Yeah, I like sharing with clients. It's exactly what you said. It's like, look, if the S&P 500 goes away, never to return. I mean, even if the Dow, if we lost the 30 largest companies in the United States all at once, we have problems that I can't help you.
Right, you should have been investing.
I'm gonna need help too. So and that has huge implications on just the dollar and the United States government. So that if you want to go down that path, Mr. or Mrs. Client, then I also would encourage you to dig a hole, build a bunker.
Exactly.
Rice, beans, ammunition, Tylenol, feminine products, all those sorts of things. And if you want to ask, well, should I have gold? Well, I mean, how do you measure the value of your gold? Dollars. Okay, so if the dollar doesn't exist, what's the gold worth? 1 box of Pampers or 2?
Yeah.
It's interesting that I'm thinking back. What's that television show? The Walking Dead.
Yes.
In The Walking Dead, they did a shortcut because they assumed that we immediately would go back to a bartering type of system. The truth is, and there's a lot of very good data out on this, on just from a historical perspective, is bartering is really hard to do because there's so many goods that have to be matched up with each other.
Right.
And what tends to happen is that we create some sort of monetary system. If you look across all the different societies where, and that was kind of, like I said, it was a shortened or revisioned history of how money was created. And we've always had I won't say always, but for a longer time than you think, there was a monetary system. As long as we had a way to account for things, there was a monetary system. It may not have been a dollar or a Deutschmark or any of those other things that we're familiar with now, or even a Bitcoin or whatever else is out there. But we had a system of figuring out how much parties owe each other and how that debt is paid, whether it is actual items or if it's just other things that society decided was worth something. But I went off on a tangent there. Sorry about that. How did we get here? So TJ, with the election that has happened, I know we're not here to predict the future at all, but some of the questions that come up or have come up is taxes. And, we could try to look back to his previous presidency to see, okay, what things were implemented then. But, I mean, there's no guarantee he's going to do the same thing in this presidency as he did in the last one. I mean, he's in a different time. Interest rates are different. Unemployment is different. The manufacturing sector. And we're also post-COVID. We're in a post-COVID world. So things are a bit different right now. But what are you saying to clients as it relates to taxes in the assumed Trump presidency starting next year?
Yeah, I mean, the way I always approach these conversations is, again, going back to principles. I really try to not speculate on things that are out of our control, right? So even, the future of fiscal policy is not really in my control because they're going to make whatever determinations they make. Now, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, right, from previous with the lower marginal tax rates, I assume that'll stay now. So I guess, you're going to have the same
Well, but
margin.
there's parts of it that are set to expire next year, though.
Right.
So that becomes the question. Are they going to expire, or like you said, will he just make them all stick?
I have no idea. So basically, what I would say is,
Exactly. Yes, that is what I want the people to hear. You're talking to you're not talking, we're talking, but you're listening. You're hearing from two very intelligent individuals that have been doing this for a long time. And you're hearing us say vulnerable things like, I don't know. Because we don't. We really don't. We're here to help you plan for your future, not predict.
100%. And that's why I think it's so important to listen to shows like yours where you're gaining financial literacy, right? So what are some things that are in our control, right? Thinking about what is our current effective and marginal tax rate, right? Are we using our tax deferred accounts like a 401k, like an IRA or a Roth IRA or a health savings account, right? Making sure that we're using up our available deductions regardless of what current or future tax rates are going to be. And then also, are we building different types of buckets of money? People don't understand, when you put money into a pre-tax account, the government hasn't got their cut on that income tax yet,
Yeah.
right? So over your lifetime, one things that I try to coach clients on is like, hey, if you are in a down year, maybe you took time off from work, or even you got laid off, but you have some resources saved up. Maybe this is a time to consider doing something like a Roth conversion, where you're converting money from a pre-tax account to a Roth account and paying taxes and insulating yourself from future tax rates, right? So these are things that you can do regardless of administration, and regardless of political party.
True, indeed. Now, there's an article I came across, TJ, recently, where it was a Michael Kitces article, where the financial advisor he interviewed had actually created some data around the Roth 401k and was contesting some of our general knowledge on it and saying that maybe a Roth 401k isn't the best investment during your peak earning years. Did you happen to come across that article?
I did. Yes, I did.
What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I think a lot of people get confused about Roth versus traditional. So one thing that's really important to understand is that if your tax rate is the same, your income tax rate is the same today as it is 30 years from now, it doesn't matter whether you put it in the Roth or traditional, okay? The tax savings comes if you are in, for Roth, for example, a lower income tax bracket now than in the future. Because when you pull it out, you're avoiding that higher income tax later in life, right? So like you said, if you're in your prime earning years and you're in the highest income bracket for you personally that you're going to be in, and this is again a speculation, you don't know, but you have a good idea, then yeah, you probably do want to go pre-tax so that you can get that valuable deduction, right? And then when you're in early retirement years or you take time off from work, then those are years to consider either converting some money to a Roth account or prioritizing Roth contributions.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point, and I think it just goes back to what we stated earlier with predicting the markets. You threw a lot of assumptions out there about how much money am I earning in the future? What are tax rates in the future? Or what are your cash flow requirements in the future? And so that what I like to share with clients is that I just think it'd be cool to have choices.
Yes.
So if you've been someone, that's the other thing about peak earning years. How do we know these are your peak earning years?
Right.
Okay. So what I share with clients is, look, I think you'd want to have some choices in the future. And if you want to make some assumptions, I just ask them, do you think taxes will be the same, go up or go down? No one says go down. Okay. Do you think your income will be the same, go up or go down? Now, it's only the pre-retirees that say go down because they're expecting their income to go down. But the folks that are like 30, 40 years old, onward and upward, baby, let's go.
Absolutely, yeah. And one thing to note, I guess, that I do have some concerns about with different administrations is right now, you can go to usdebtclock.com or .org and see the actual where our money's going basically. And right now we're paying
for the sake of keeping my lunch down. I'm not going to pull that one up and because it makes me sick every time. But go ahead, TJ. I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, you're good. Yeah. So basically, like, we're spending more on our interest expense currently than we are on our defense budget, right? So, and we spend a lot on defense. And so basically, anytime we increase the deficit, meaning that we spend more as a country than we make, what that really is we're kicking the can down the road, and we're gonna basically future generations or whatever are gonna have to pay that as we increase the debt, right? We're gonna have to figure out how to increase taxes to pay that. So this is another reason also, like you said, to build for balance, right? Is at least have some tax-free bucket of money and take advantage of, like, even if you are a high income earner, for example, and you are doing pre-tax contributions to your 401k, you can still do a backdoor Roth IRA, right? They still get that $7,000 into that Roth IRA. You're still building that bucket over time and having some future flexibility.
And shame on you, Congress and IRS. You didn't increase the IRA contributions for 2025. What are we doing here?
No inflation adjustment or anything?
Come on. All the inflation we had, what are we doing? Ladies and gentlemen, please write a letter to your local congressperson and say, really, what are we doing? That's all the letter needs to say. Well, and then say the Roth contributions and IRA contributions will go up. But it should start off with, really, what are we doing here? So, TJ, with every guest on the show, we like to ask them a question about their past. Sure. And that question is, will you share with us your first memory of money?
Oof, man, I got a lot of them. I mean, first memory of money is, the first one that comes to mind is, my dad during 07, 08 got a little extended with, trying to make a real estate, build some sweat equity in a real estate transaction, got over his head and ended up actually having to, sell our home at the time.
Whoa, like the home you were living in?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's heavy.
Yeah, it was tough. And we figured it out. And I lived with a friend for a year to stay.
I got heavy quick. Okay.
Yeah.
Wasn't ready.
So that was a big one. That was just the first one that comes. I'm sure there's ones before that, but
that's I think that one takes the cake. Wow. So I follow-up questions. How old were you?
I was like 12 at the time. Yeah, 12.
So for those of you that didn't pick up on the words he didn't say, is what he said is that him and his family were homeless for a short period of time because his father was forced to sell the home they were in due to being overextended in the real estate bubble of 08, 09. TJ, my heart goes out to you. Is your father still with us?
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Okay, good.
He bounced back.
Man, hey, when you see him, give him a hug for me. Man, that's whew.
It was a tough time for him. Yeah, I saw him definitely, mental health struggle. He also came from very much like a scarcity type mindset where he was one of 6. His parents were Dutch immigrants and he was very poor to grow up. So he worked so hard for that money, and he real estate was really to him kind of the safest type of investment because it's tangible.
So he learned with safety.
Yeah. So that would probably be one of my, and then obviously that kind of inspired me to be like, okay, well.
Yeah, I also was able to put that together as well. I don't know if our guests were, but or our listeners, yes.
Yeah, it makes sense why I'm a financial planner today is really just like figuring out. I was confused at the time. One thing I actually used to ask him was like, how is everybody struggling at the same time? I kind of viewed like economies as like a zero-sum game, right? Not everybody can be struggling. If somebody's struggling, there should be somebody doing well.
Should be a winner on the other side, you would think.
Yeah, but there really wasn't.
Winners. Yeah. No.
Yeah, or at least I know.
Oh, well, they were. They just all had already kind of rode off into the sunset, and they left America holding the bag.
That's right, and the taxpayer eventually, right? With the So those are, I guess, the kind of financial traumas, right, that shape you as a person.
That's huge. Well, TJ, thank you. Thanks to your father for fortunately and unfortunately taking you through that valuable lesson, because now look at all the people that you're touching with your expertise on how to not make some of the same mistakes. We can absolutely learn by doing, but if someone wants to tell me that, hey, watch out, there's crocodiles in that river, I'll take the word for it. Okay, cool. I don't need to swim in the river to find out. So I'm very happy that it turned into a positive for you, and I'm sure it is for all the great work that you do for your clients.
Yeah, I mean, that's the goal is like, money, it's a cliche, but money is just a tool, right? So we want to avoid having attachment to it. We want to use it. The idea of building wealth, in my opinion, is actually to use it, right? It's not just for the sole purpose of running up the numbers. So yeah, I love the idea of really maximizing your resources so that you can do more with your money, right? That's the goal.
That's the goal. Do more with. I see what you did there. So, ladies and gents, yes, it's a new day in the United States of America. We have another president. It happens, about every 4 or sometimes 8 years. It just so happens that this one is a previous version that we've kind of seen before. It's almost like, you sold your car and then you went back and bought it again. Okay, why did I ever get rid of that car? Let me get it back. So what impact is it going to have on taxes? What impact is it going to have on the stock market? Well, over the last 4 days, it's been positive, but long term, but sources say that probably the market's going to go up, and it's probably going to go down, and it's probably going to go up some more. So more of the same. But as TJ was sharing, focus on your goals. Focus on your relationship with money. Focus on the economy that is in your household. That is the most important economy to you, is the economic factors, the fiscal policies of your household. And of course, if you need some help, reach out to a financial advisor. Doesn't have to be me, doesn't have to be TJ, but it should be someone. Find someone that you can trust. Do the little chat GPT. What are 10 questions I should ask before hiring a financial advisor? It'll give you 10 great questions to ask. Interview someone and get some help. And by all means, as I mentioned earlier, share this with just one person. Yeah, that person, the one you just thought of, share it with that person. And hopefully they will start to improve their financial literacy as well. So with that, we will see you next time on the Money Strip Podcast. Thank you, TJ, so much for spending some time with us, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
I'm back. Wasn't that a great show? I hope you learned something. I know I did. Now, before you go trying anything you heard today, remember, it is not intended to be specific tax or legal advice. If you need that, go see a CPA or an attorney. If you would like any complimentary consultation with a knowledgeable advisor, visit moneyscript.com and schedule a 15-minute consultation. Want Yohance to come speak at your next event? Go to the Money Script website for that too. Of course, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click the bell for notifications. MoneyScript Wealth Management is a registered financial advisory service in multiple states. Want to learn more? Get the full disclosure on our website, moneyscript.com.